the schoolyard where we'd play.
The Still Loading podcast is brought to you by the wonderful people on Patreon. Amazing people like Ryan K., Stephen P., Gilmer, Kevin from the Bit by Bit Foundation, Matt aka Stormageddon, and Mr. Biscuits have all been wonderful enough to support the show over there. So if you would also like to get your name read at the beginning of an episode, along with a bunch of other goodies, go over to patreon.com/stillloadingpod and check out everything it has to offer.
Here's the chapel where we wed. I won't forget the loving words we said, though times were tough and many tears were shed. We laid our plans and tried to get ahead.
On this episode of Still Loading,
The First World War. Victory had been ours, but we would soon fail at the peace that followed. Our leaders appeased the growing evil instead of fighting it, sacrificing our future. We vainly reinforced our borders with concrete while we evacuated our children from the cities. There was something terrible brewing with our old enemy, and no one seemed able to stop it. The world was about to find out what happens when an entire nation is swept by madness. What would you do? Surrender? Collaborate? Or resist?
Hello, everyone, and welcome to this new episode of the Still Loading podcast. I'm your host, Josh Koval, and today's episode, it is the second episode of Punch a Nazi Month. You know, for no particular reason, we're having just, a month all about punching Nazis. And joining me today to enjoy punching some goddamn Nazis is Dave from Remember 64, and we are talking about Medal of Honor Underground today. Dave, how are you doing today?
I'm fantastic, and my fists are clenched and ready to go.
Oh, here we go, baby.
Here we go.
We're here, though, to talk about Medal of Honor Underground. I'm really excited for this one, man. I love the Medal of Honor series, and I'll get into my experience with this one in a little bit. But when I was kind of putting this series together, I was like, man, part of the impetus for it was this game, wanting to play this game for the show. So, I mean, I explained in the first episode what the whole story of how this series came to be. So if you want to know more about like why I'm doing a Punch a Nazi Month series, you can go back to that first episode and check that out. But yeah, we're here to talk about Medal of Honor Underground. So as of course we are all want to do to kick this off, we're going to talk about our personal experiences. We're going to talk about how did Medal of Honor go underground, at least for us on this one. Dave, I want to start off with you. What was your experience with this game? And I believe, if I remember correctly, this was the first time you played it, right?
Yes, this is the first time I played it. When I was first looking it up, when you were sort of proposing that this is the game that we play together and talk about, I looked it up and I was like, oh yeah, there's a GBA version of this too. I remember seeing that. Maybe maybe someone at school had it or something.
Did you see any video of the GBA version?
Well, so that's the thing, is I saw a couple screenshots and a couple brief videos and stuff before I started playing the PlayStation version that we're talking about. And I vaguely remember it. I don't think I ever played it, but for some reason I was like, I think I've seen this before, or maybe I've just seen it in the past and I'm just creating a memory, but I don't think I played any of the Underground games. Medal of Honor, yes. From time to time, I've come in and out of the series. But this particular game, I was not a PlayStation kid. I never had a PS1. I had a couple friends that did. I didn't have a PlayStation until 3. And every once in a while, it was, I'd play an FPS on a PlayStation. But a lot of the time, PlayStation for us was Gran Turismo and sort of like classics like that, and Crash and God of War and things like that, right? So no, I never actually played this game until the last couple of weeks. And I believe I played the first Medal of Honor, which was leading up to this, maybe second. I don't know. Actually, I'm sure you'll correct me.
This is the second Medal of Honor.
This
The first
is the
Medal of
second
Honor,
one?
yes.
Okay.
The first Medal of Honor is just called Medal of Honor. The second Medal of Honor is this one.
Okay, so I definitely played the first one, and to my memory, I played either the one that came out just after Underground or the one after that, the fourth one or something. So that's most of my experience with Medal of Honor is with those games, and then one or two of the much later ones, maybe a decade ago or something like that. So, no experience with this game going in. I didn't really know that much about it. I see the name Underground and I go, oh, maybe you're just, part of some sort of resistance or something, or I know generally when all these games at this time took place. So I was kind of excited to jump in, and my experience was brand new this time around.
I'm excited to get your thoughts on it, like how, like going in it with fresh eyes and no nostalgia, like how it held up for you. So I'm excited as we get into the gameplay to hear your thoughts on it.
Yeah.
For myself, this was something that I owned this game as a kid. I did an episode a year, maybe 2 years ago on the original Medal of Honor with Cade from the Gaming Memories podcast. And I talked a little bit about my memories and recollections of the series there, and I'll go into it again here very quickly. Medal of Honor is one of like the most influential series for me on a personal level. And also in terms of, video games, it's one of those games that's like sneaky influential that not a lot of people talk about now, but it definitely influenced a lot. Especially it was like for a while, it was the premier first person shooter on PlayStation, because remember at the time, you had GoldenEye, you had Perfect Dark, you had, The World Is Not Enough, which I know people don't give enough credit for, but we talked about that on your show.
Don't worry. We got you covered, everybody. Remember 64. Check it out.
So PlayStation really didn't have first-person shooters before Medal of Honor. They had a few. Don't get me wrong. I'm not saying they didn't have any. Disruptor from Insomniac was on there.
Oh yeah.
Lone. But this was like the first premier first-person shooter for the PS1, and not Underground specifically, but the Medal of Honor, the first Medal of Honor game. And I remember playing it at a church friend's house. Like I went up to, like, him and his buddy were playing it up in his room, and I remember seeing that and just being like, whoa, what is this? And I was like really into World War II at the time, like World War II history and stuff like that. And so I really got into it from that. And then I remember when I finally got a PS1, I asked for a Medal of Honor game, and I got Medal of Honor Underground, and I was really interested in like, oh, this is different than the first one. And what is this? You're playing as a woman named, like, this isn't Jimmy Patterson. Who is this? What's going on here? And I was very confused about like the difference with it. And then I realized it was a different game, different character, but the gameplay was pretty much the same. And in fact, for a while, and we'll get to it when we talk about the gameplay, it had one of my favorite, like this game, Medal of Honor Underground specifically, has one of my favorite levels in any game of all time. Like at least it did for a while. Now
Look
I
at
don't
you
know.
with the tease. Now you got me on the edge of my seat.
Dude, this was a big game for me because the Medal of Honor series in general was really big for me. And so, yeah, I really enjoyed getting to replay it for the first time. Now, this game's weird where there are 7 main missions and then an 8th bonus mission, which you don't technically need to beat if you don't want to. It's like it's a completely different character. The 8th mission in this game, you play as Jimmy Patterson again, but it's in a weird like sci-fi version of like World War II, where there's like Nazi experiments and shit like that, and you have to fight like super soldiers and junk like that. Like it's play
Wolfenstein.
For this. Yeah, pretty much. Like how far? I know you weren't quite finished with the game when we were talking yesterday. Did you end up beating it, or how far did you?
I didn't end up getting. So I ended up getting. I'm trying to find. I don't have it pulled up right in front of me. I'm looking through. Let's see. I think I was right in the middle of the second last area or mission, if you want to call it that, because you said there's 7, right?
There's 7 missions, and then there's like
that bonus one. Yeah. So I was in like the second, mission. Like the second last area, I believe, or last area of the 6th. So I came close. You came close to the end. All right. Yeah. So the game gets pretty challenging towards the end of it. Like there's quite a few bumps in the road, but not not in a terrible way, but yeah, it does get pretty rough towards the end. It's difficult.
So yeah, that's my personal experience with it. I grew up with Medal of Honor. Medal of Honor Underground, what for a long while had one of my favorite missions of all time, and it's funny because then I forgot about it. Then when I played it for this, I'm like, oh shit, I remember this mission now. I loved this mission. And now as an adult, it's actually still a pretty decent mission, but I don't necessarily have the same level of fondness for it that I did when I was like 13 years old or whatever.
Sure.
Times change. It's been 20 years since I really first played this game.
Yeah.
But so before we dive into the gameplay, some fun facts, as I always do. Like, I try to find ways to weave it into the different parts of the game, like whether it's gameplay or visuals, but a lot of these are just about behind the scenes stuff. So we'll kind of go into some of this here. Before Steven Spielberg set up DreamWorks Interactive, who made the first Medal of Honor game. And before he knew that the first Medal of Honor was a success, he actually sold off DreamWorks Interactive, to EA, which is why the series came under their ownership and their purview, which is why every other Medal of Honor was done by EA.
Right.
In the original Medal of Honor game, Manon, the character you play in this game, was actually an NPC that gave Jimmy Patterson, the main character of the first game, a mission. So they actually kind of drew her from, they used Manon from that first game and said, what if we made her as the main hero in this one? And that's where she came from. And switching from a male to a female main character had to be fought for. Unfortunately, not surprising. Unfortunately, even now, people like, not to get too topical, but if they made this now, there'd be a whole bunch of grifters being like, oh, they made Medal of Honor woke or some shit like that.
I'm sure that term would be thrown around far too easily, far too often.
Exactly. It's fucking stupid. It'd be really disappointing. But the thing that actually was able to get them to allow them to put Manon as the main character was that they cited Tomb Raider's popularity, and so EA was like, sure, why not?
And at that point, there would be at least 2 or 3 Tomb Raiders. So, and lots of success too.
Mm-hmm. Let me see real quick here. There's a couple of things I will be able to interweave in as we're talking about the gameplay and whatnot. But this one's good. When they were developing the game, they spoke to actual French resistance fighters for research. They even tracked down the phone number of Elizabeth P. McIntosh, who was one of the French resistance fighters, and cold called her to set up an interview with her and 2 other resistance fighters.
Yes.
Isn't that crazy?
Hell yeah. That's awesome. Like that. I mean, there's lots of behind the scenes work that goes into any game, really, but like to do that with something like this is a World War II based story, game, characters, situations, all that stuff, right?
Mm-hmm.
You could kind of, with the way that this story in this game plays out, which obviously we'll get to in more detail, you actually could probably just, make it up. You probably could find a way to say, kind of like a Indiana Jones, or I always go back to like Forrest Gump as an example, where it's like he's just interweaved into the things that happened to everybody's life in during that time, but he just is the guy that's somehow involved in everything, like, or shows up in the background of everything. In a way, you could do that with this and still not quote unquote affect history, but they made sure that they didn't do that, and they actually really did their research. And
so much so, Manon is based off of a real French resistance fighter, Helene. I can't pronounce her name because I cannot speak French, but Helene Deschamps Adams.
I had that pulled up. I'm going to find it and see. Helene Deschamps Adams. Yeah.
Okay. She had joined the resistance as a teenager, and so this is an exact quote from an article I found. They met with Helene Deschamps Adams, who joined the resistance as a teenager and became a spy embedded within the Vichy regime. For those who don't know, the Vichy regime was the French puppet government that Hitler pretty much installed when he took over. And a quote, and the quote continues, and I quote, "She was one of the strongest willed and sharpest of mind women I've ever met, and will never forget her," says Langtao. I guess one of the I can't tell if that was I think it was one of the developers. I'm sorry. So I
That's
really,
awesome.
one of the developers said that. He continues his quote here. Her story, some details of which are truly heart wrenching, will be with me forever. She was a true hero and a French patriot. End quote. And then the rest of the excerpt, from the article. She was awarded the Distinguished Service Medal by the United States and honored by France in a joint ceremony in 2000, in part due to her work with her. States Langtao, who attended the ceremony at the French consulate in Manhattan.
Nice.
So I thought that was really cool. I think there's a bunch of other stuff I can go into, but I think it will make a little more sense as we get into the game. I will say the last thing that I did, I think would fit here, just because we're kind of talking about the background with it. We should also talk about how the game was received. There was this game wasn't always like, it was praised overall, but journalists and I guess some people were shitty back then. So some journalists were pretty shitty about it. And here's another excerpt from that same article. When we did a preview of the game in the early days of production, Langtao continues, a journalist who did a piece on Underground and the previewer said in regards to playing the role of a woman in the French resistance that this would be one game he hoped to lose. Sorry, excuse me. I think I might have read that a little bit off, but essentially the reviewer who did a preview of the game hoped the game would fail, essentially.
Oh my God.
And the guy said, I thought that was just a disgraceful sentiment and I've never forgotten it. So Langtao still remembers it and he's still mad about it. I don't know when this article was written. I'll try to find the article so I can tell you when it was actually within the last decade or so, though.
Brutal. I'm looking up a couple of some of the scores and sort of reception stuff like you are at the moment too, and I see one. This is just, I did a really quick search. You're the research extraordinaire here at this point. But on Wikipedia, they have a quote from Next Gen magazine that reviewed it, and it says, "A terrific game gets a sequel that's in some ways even better. After all, it's still true. At the end of the day, nothing is more satisfying than shooting a Nazi in the face."
That goddamn right it is.
Fuck yeah. And that's why we're here, everyone.
Side note, this was from psu.com, written by James Hoyle, and it came out on January 20. This interview was released in 2018. January 28th, 2018. So he interviewed Langtao, which I'll see if I can find the actual, his first name. So Scott J. Langtao, who was the producer of the game. So yeah, that's the interview that I got most of this information from. Some other couple things. This could be tied in with visuals, but I think it would make more sense to include it here. The original game had pushed the technological capabilities of the PS1, and somehow Underground went even further. And in the run up to the release, Langtao was able to assure GameSpot that, and I quote, "There is next to no space left on the disc, and promised levels with as many as 29 compartments and 40,000 polygons, quite a strain on the memory allowance." And Langtao continues, we were always having fights over memory, all departments getting very little for audio, textures, models, etc., and bartering each other on any given level or section of level to get more. So they really just pushed the PS1. I mean, this is a late PS1 game. I guess we probably should have.
That's true.
The game originally came out on October 24th, 2000 in North America. And then in Europe, it was December 1st, 2000, with the Game Boy Advance port 2 years later on November 25th, 2002 in North America, and May 9th, 2003 in Europe. So that's all the stuff I have at the top for just some behind the scenes things. But I do think that really highlights one of the things that I've loved about the early Medal of Honor games is the reverence they gave for this. They never really glorified war in these games. Yes, you're playing a war game, so in a sense you're making war fun. I understand that's a little weird at times.
Right.
But it's not, and listen, I don't mind Call of Duty. I'm not a Call of Duty hater, but Call of Duty glorifies war, no ifs, ands, or buts. It's very much about the beauty of the sacrifice and the teamwork and all its other stuff. And Medal of Honor is very much honoring the sacrifices of the people for involved in a very real worldwide conflict, obviously, that killed millions of people, and it's meant to like serve as remembrance and as a forewarning. Like this game, they give you a lot of context with your with this game. Like they don't just let you play through World War II levels based in World War II and you're just shooting people. And this is a good way to branch into the gameplay. Each mission begins with a little video describing the mission you're on. They go into a little bit of exposition, just talking about like, oh, this means this and this means this, just because even though I'm sure Manon, the character, would probably know it, you, the player, do not. So they have to kind of explain some things in like the briefings.
I think they do that's a good reason to do it. I like that I like that touch. To me, that added to the overall story and just sort of like incentive to jump into the next set of levels, I think.
Mm-hmm. And then once you beat a mission, so each mission generally is comprised of a handful of levels. I think like the first mission has like 3 or 4 or something, or maybe even only 2. It ranges between those two, but generally I would say most of like probably 5 out of the 7 levels, there's only like 5 out of 7 missions, there's like 3 levels in it or so. But once you beat a mission, you've finished all the levels and then you beat the mission, they give you a little like mini documentary that's only about like a minute and a half long or so. And it is it's giving you context for what the real world events based off what you just played through was actually about. So you get kind of like the fun dramatized video game version of it, and then you see the real thing.
I love that.
Yeah,
like I absolutely love that. Like going through school and learning about the world wars and stuff was like very eye-opening as a kid, and like we did a lot of it in mid-grade school, I guess you could call it. I'm not sure. I can't remember exactly when they introduced that to us in school, but like all those things as a kid, you're oblivious to that. And then you're taught about it and you're like, holy fuck, like Jesus, like my grandparents did what, or were involved in what, or my friend's grandparents died doing what, like all those types of things that are really heavy that you sort of quickly learn through some textbooks sort of thing. To be able to, like you said, maybe not trivialize, but make war fun with a video game sort of thing. They don't just shy away from the fact that this is real. This is what's happening. And this is, whether you know it or not, and whether this story was quote unquote made up or not, you're involved in something that's real. You're playing through something that's real, even though you're a person walking around with a, Molotov cocktail and a couple of guns and stuff
that somehow barely can fucking throw it.
Yeah. Oh my God. Yeah. We'll get to that part. I appreciate that extra effort. And if I feel like, I don't know if they had to struggle to get things like that through, because I think early Call of Duty and early Medal of Honor both tried to make that part of their games. And I agree. I think Medal of Honor, from what my memory, at least those earlier games, they captured that a lot more. Call of Duty sort of switched gears pretty quickly. Maybe after 2, they kind of did that. But those touches, for me personally, go a long way into enjoying any game like this. Like whether the gameplay's perfect or not, those things matter to me. And I don't know, I appreciate that more as an adult. I'm sure if I played this when I was younger, when it first came out, I would grasp it a little bit. But, as someone who's in their late 30s, I appreciate it even more. I think it's great.
Well, I enjoyed it even as a kid. Like I still enjoyed it, but I don't think I really appreciated the information they were relaying to me. Like
the levity of it all, like there's something to it.
I understand the reality of what happened a lot more now, as a mid-30s, also someone in their 30s. Obviously it still doesn't 100% hit home because I didn't grow up in a war-torn France in the 40s. Sure. It still is something where like I can look at that now and just have a lot more, like it's a lot more sobering, like it's not this, it's a fun game still, but I look at it with much more reverence, not the game specifically, but like what happened and like what the people had to go through. So it's this type of game. I actually think like it's funny compared to when I did my first Medal of Honor episode to now, I have a much greater respect for the games because they aren't trying to, like I said, they are not trying to glorify war. Maybe they do in a little bit, and maybe while their intention isn't to do that and they don't do it perfectly, but I still admire what they are trying to do with it. And I would argue are for the most part successful. Like obviously you're still making war fun. That's a video game, like that's going to be inherently to it. But
yeah, you can die and still start the level over again.
Exactly. And also like some of the characters, some of the enemies, when you shoot them, they're a little like with their goofy PS1 animation and visuals. It's a little funny at times.
Yeah.
But it really is like, it just was a lot more sobering watching this now, especially with the fact that you're playing as a resistance fighter in this game, a female French resistance fighter, and having to having to go through all these different missions. And we'll get to it. I mean, I guess this ties in with gameplay. This game actually has a story. It's not a phenomenal one. And normally, like Medal of Honor, I wouldn't even touch on the story, but I'm kind of including it in this kind of like gameplay type section here, like as we're kind of slowly transitioning over to talking about the mechanics specifically. But the fact that the fact that there was actually a story in this, where the first mission begins and Manon is meeting her brother. I can't remember his name, but meeting her brother. I can look it up while we're talking too. She's meeting her brother Jacques, and under the Eiffel Tower.
Of course, it's Jacques. Of course,
it's Jacques. And they are trying to do a mission for the resistance, and her brother gets killed in an attempted heist.
I did not see that coming, by the way.
It's
like I'm
shocking.
sure it wouldn't surprise me if at some point the person you're with, sibling or not, dies. I get it.
Mm-hmm.
That's a thing. But when it happened and how it happened like so early, I was like, whoa, okay, this is real. I get it. All right, I'm here.
They try to give you personal stakes right from the get-go.
Absolutely. Yeah, it happens in the first like 15 minutes.
Mm-hmm. It is a little weird that like they don't really touch on the story at all after that. Like they have like some references where it's like, we're sorry about your brother Manon, or your brother would be proud of this and that. The end of the game at mission 7, you actually end up back in Paris, so you begin you end where the game began, excuse me, and that's supposed to add some type of like, it's this not a denouement, I guess like a catharsis. That's it, a little bit of catharsis of like, you're finishing what you started, sort of. And in fact, so much so I believe the person who, or the Vichy like group that like ended up killing your brother, you're fighting them at the very end of the game, type of thing.
Love it.
So there is a very basic plot where your brother dies in the beginning and you avenge him at the very end of the game. But there's really not a whole lot of connective tissue other than that. But one of the notes I did have for this was the first game in the series to have a story. I mean, I guess it's not that hard considering the first game didn't have one at all and this one does. But it's still cool to see that little bit of an iteration where like, well, let's take this format that we had the first time and see, can we apply a narrative to it? And they do okay. Like that first mission is a gut punch. Like it works really well, surprising you, especially like you don't like, did I do something wrong? Like, did you feel that? Did you think you did something wrong?
Well, yeah, because the thing is I did a little bit. I think quickly kind of tells you like, keep going. So I was like, okay, I guess this is kind of supposed to happen. But in games like this, like, it's very easy to reference GoldenEye, which you mentioned earlier and stuff. But, when you screw up or when something happens that changes something unexpectedly or whatever, like I feel like sometimes in like GoldenEye specifically, you can just keep going and you can just mess around. And that's the kind of game that it is, right? That's where a lot of people got their fun single player, is just go and do something silly. If you screw up, no big deal. Just see how long you can survive or whatever. So I thought maybe for a second, that's what this game was giving me an opportunity to do. But, I agree that it kind of loses its footing in some of the story and stuff as it goes. It's kind of just like, okay, go mission to mission, be the resistance person, mission to mission. But I still think that this particular point when it happened, I did think I did something wrong. But then when I went through like the tunnel that's next to it, it kept going. And I was like, okay, this happened for a reason. This is going to keep the story going, or at least give me some momentum or some motivation and stuff. And yeah, I'm okay that it's more of a linear thing that was going to happen regardless. I was still okay with that. So, yeah.
Now, I was before I asked you, your thoughts on it. I was trying to find a quote, and listeners won't hear my frustration. That's going to be edited out. But I found the quote that I was looking for from that PSU article about how this game has much more story in it than the first one. And the quote goes, "Manon proved to be an inspired choice for a heroine, fighting on the streets of her own nation in such desperate times, at odds with her collaborating countrymen, and dealing with the loss of her brother, imbues her character and journey with far more intrigue and drama than that of the first game's rather anonymous hero, Jimmy Patterson. It also provides the loose assortment of missions that make up both games' storylines with a greater sense of narrative cohesion, and ensures that Underground's ending is more satisfying than the original's abrupt finale." End quote. I love that quote, specifically just
That's great.
if you really think about you're playing as someone who is fighting against her own countrymen who are collaborating with the Nazis. How fucked up is that to think about? That's crazy.
Yeah, that's a really good point, because it's easy to go through a lot of these games or games like this and not think about what all that would mean in that person's shoes. And I think this game is, like that quote says, is trying to put you in that position, which is hard to do. Let's be honest, it's hard, especially at that time when technology doesn't present itself in a more way that feels more real, based on visuals and sound and all those things. Nowadays, I feel like you could probably connect to something because of just the way it looks and sounds. Maybe there's an extra way that you can reach through the screen, so to speak. But they're trying to do that in the early 2000s. I mean, that's tough to do, and I think that it's commendable to be able to say, look, this is some serious shit, and you're gonna kick some asses, this lady, and work your way through. And I actually, just the story, in general, just speaking to it in a more general sense, I love that it is you are the resistance. You are working behind the scenes in a way. And I thought that was one of my favorite parts of going from level to level, is that it's not really the same, because obviously this is reality. You are kind of like a James Bond type, spy working through things, or like Mission Impossible, where people aren't supposed to know you're there, but you're still making a difference. Things like that. That is cool. That is what a resistance is. That is part of the hard work that people were doing during this time, and it's great that they brought it to the forefront, even if it is a video game and not a documentary, which I'm sure there was about stuff like this at that time. But I really liked how they placed the protagonist in this, and that you weren't just on the battlefield. I liked that you were in the streets and in these dark areas and trying to sabotage your way through missions. I really like that. I'll get to it when we talk a little bit more into detail of some of the stages and stuff, but I still liked that was the main crux of what you needed to do.
I'm in agreement with you on that, man. Specifically, a lot of the stealth levels where you get a disguise as a photographer or something.
Yeah.
And you have to go through and basically don't alert the bad guys. You have to pretend you're this photographer for whatever, for some German publication.
Yeah.
And you have to go through. And I love how when you have the camera, if you aim it like you're aiming a gun, and quote unquote take a picture, the Nazi soldiers will actually pose for you and stuff like that.
Oh, I did not do that with them. That's so funny.
Oh yeah, if you
I was
try
taking
to take
pictures of the things it tells you to find, but I didn't actually take any pictures of the soldiers themselves. That's so funny.
Yeah, if you try to photograph them like they are, you're you're trying to get a slice of life from their post or whatever.
Yeah.
They actually will pose. They'll do like weird muscle man poses. I'll try to find pictures of it. You could probably look through it up on a playthrough.
I'll
or something
look it up.
like that.
I'll look it up while we're talking.
But it's
so
pretty
funny.
amusing.
Yeah.
And that's something I really enjoyed in this compared to the first game, where the first game, while I still love it, there wasn't a lot of stealth per se. There was one or two levels where you would have to get papers and then go through a Nazi base and take their paper, and then they show them your papers and blah blah blah. This game, there's a lot more in that. Especially, I think the first time you even have to do it is on the second mission, which is called Hunting the Desert Fox, where you start out in Casablanca, and you have to fight you have escape from a hotel. You have like just the objectives in the order: escape from the hotel, find the, oh wait, no, this is not the right mission, my bad. But there are missions that you have to do where you have to get like a photographer's, actually it's the very next mission after that, the very next level. It's called Lighting the Torch is the name of the level.
The third or the fourth one, you're the photographer as well.
Yeah, you find a disguise, and then you have to go through the Nazi base in Africa and radio the American fleet and blah blah blah. So I
like that mission. That mission was fun. That was really cool.
And then they always have some crazy action set piece for you to escape. Like I think in the Hunting the Desert Fox mission, it ends with you like on an airway having to like shoot guys. It's insane. There's actually some really good set pieces in this game.
Yeah, there is. And then like there's a lot of like tight quarters and stuff like that too. Like it is pretty linear and stuff. So before I lose my own train of thought, which happens often, I am quite tired, people. Is that so I agree that I do like I said before, I like the whole, resistance, underground, behind the scenes type idea of the crux of the story. I truly love that idea. The only issue I had with it is that sometimes these stealth missions, they tell you to be careful, they tell you not to make a scene or whatever, but at a certain point you don't have a choice and you just have to shoot everything. Or there'll be certain levels, I think it might be in that third set of stages, where you have the camera in your hand, like you start as if you're the photographer, but the second you see the first soldier, they start shooting at you anyway. So it's like, well, why are you telling me that I'm undercover when the rest of this whole stage is me just running and gunning, so to speak? So I think they lost There
is a couple. Yeah, there is.
It doesn't happen on all of them, and the ones that doesn't happen, I actually think, like you said before, are great. But I was a little bit disappointed because I was like, well, the one before I was able to sort of do a half and half. Like I made my way through. I faked a couple pictures. I showed my papers. Like I was quiet, didn't cause a scene, all that kind of stuff. That's great. I like that. And then at a certain point, okay, maybe I got to kill a couple guys. No problem. But there's a couple where you start and then it's like, well, I might as well just have had my gun out the whole time anyways. Like, what am I doing? So, the explanation leading up to what you're doing tells you that you're undercover. But the second you stand in front of one of the soldiers, even with your disguise, they know it's fake. So
yeah,
it happens. It's not a major thing. They executed it in one point, but didn't in the next point. And I was kind of thrown off by that.
No, I'm with you on that. I think I remember those missions as well, and it frustrated me to say the least.
Yeah, and it doesn't take away from what you do in the mission, because it's still I enjoyed playing those missions, but if you want to tell me that I'm undercover, allow me to at least have the chance to be undercover on those missions, not just one out of the three, for example.
Something else that we should go into now is we've kind of danced around it, but I guess we should really describe for those who have not played this game. Medal of Honor is a Medal of Honor Underground, is a first-person shooter. Obviously a World War II first-person shooter. I think it should be obvious to those who've been listening so far.
Yeah,
considering we compared it to Call of Duty. But
the first Medal of Honor
and the first Medal of Honor. Well, if they don't know what the first Medal of Honor is, though, I don't know. But
that's true. That's fair.
They excuse me. They have a good variety of weapons in this game. There's the silenced pistol. There's like the Stig 44 or whatever it is. There's a lot of different weapons in this game.
Yeah.
I should probably, let me see here. Can I find a list? Oh yeah. Here's a list of the weapons. You have, obviously you have an M1897 trench gun. You got a BAR, you got a Colt 45. There are a lot of weapons in this game. Actually, there's a handful of French weapons. There's a bunch of German ones. I mean, I usually ended up using the Stig 44 a lot if it was available. But I do think it's kind of funny. There's that one stealth mission, just looking about this reminded me of it, where you begin the mission with a crossbow. It has to be like all stealth, right?
Yeah.
And it's called the Big Joe crossbow. And that motherfucker takes up like 3/4 of the screen.
It's huge.
It's so goddamn big. I remember I'm playing it. I'm like, what is happening here? This takes up the whole screen. What's wrong with you?
Unless did they tell you that it's a crossbow? I can't remember. I guess the name of it. I guess,
I
or
don't know
do
if they
tell you
said Big Joe, but they did call it a crossbow. I
Yeah, so
thought.
unless I saw that word somewhere, I would have thought this is some like crazy made up weapon type. Like it looks funny. It's like this giant triangle type thing. Like it's so strange looking. I don't know. Is that what crossbows looked like in the 40s? Maybe, I don't know.
I don't know. I have a video of a long play up of it in the background right now, and I'm looking at it. It takes up like over 2/3 of the bottom of the screen.
Yeah.
It's
When normally
huge.
it's just like this thin little gun in like one hand. Like it's just such a
Yeah.
stark difference from the other weapons.
Oh, it's so fun. And honestly, it's not that useful. Like, it's cool that it can take out enemies quietly, but it takes a long time to reload. And they almost always put two enemies next to each other. So you shoot one, and then you're almost guaranteed to get shot before you're able to get the second guy because it takes so goddamn long to reload.
Yeah,
So,
and as
like, they give you this thing to be stealthy, and then they put you in situations where you cannot be stealthy.
or you can't be. Yeah, and I think that's kind of what I was getting at before too, is that's the thing, is they take you out of the stealth situation, which is a little bit, it's disappointing, right? I think there's that, and then there's a silenced pistol. Is there anything else that was stealth? I'm trying to remember offhand. That might be it.
Not that I remember. I mean, technically, the sniper rifles are like kind of played off a little bit as stealth, even though they're loud as shit. Like,
Yeah,
that.
but you can do
I
it from a
always-
distance, I guess, is the difference.
Yeah.
Right? So,
Well,
yeah.
it was always funny to me that it was like, you could like take them out from distance and no one would hear you unless there was unless they were right next unless the
beside
guy
you.
you shot was right next to someone else, because that gun, it was like you would hear echoes. It echoes throughout the countryside every time you fire. I'm like,
Yeah.
if this were real, they would all be on high alert because that's not quiet. Like you would have heard that for miles.
I agree.
Oh my god! Especially again, probably of that caliber. That's insane.
At that time too, it's not like they had any other way of making it or whatever it is. But yeah, it's pretty funny.
I want to move on to talking about some of the individual missions now. I'm not saying we have to go through beat by beat, because there are 7 missions, and there's what is it? I even have it up in front of me. Like the first mission has 4 levels, the second mission has 4 levels, but then it's the third has 3, the fourth has 3, fifth, 6, and fifth and sixth also have 3, and the final one has 4. So I guess I was off in the beginning when I said some of them have 2. For some reason, I thought the first level.
I thought the first one did too, but maybe I was But it's and the thing is too, maybe you're about to get into it, so I apologize if I'm stepping on you here, but like,
no, you're fine.
They vary in length too, and basically what it is each one of these levels is a step to this particular mission and area that you are. So it's not like you're doing 4 different levels and you're doing drastically different things. It's almost like they're splitting up the load screens is kind of what they're doing, it feels like, in order to complete this larger mission that has 4 steps to it. Well, instead of having to load every time you open a door, it loads that particular chunk of that mission, and then it just sort of flows from there, which to me, at that time, loading was just how it was. You dealt with it, and up until very recently, it wasn't really a thing you could live without. But especially on like a PlayStation.
Well, now they
for
get
example,
all the loading up at the beginning of the game when you have to install it.
Exactly, yeah. But a loading screen happens sometimes when you literally opened a door at this time. So I think they did a good job of stopping you and saying, okay, you've played for 15, 20 minutes, whatever it might be. Here's the next step. This is what you got to look for. This is what you're going to be doing, how you might need to do it. Also heads up for this, and okay, go on to the next step. And then it did that, anywhere between 3 to 4 times. So even though there was technically load screens, I never really felt it. And I liked that this is how things were structured in the way that you were explaining.
Well, it's because they also have little mission like paper interstitials between each of the levels within the missions, so it gives you a little bit more context for what you're doing and why you're doing it. Also, this is we could use this to transition into like art and visuals and overall aesthetic and music and all that stuff, but we'll save that for just a little bit once we're done talking about the gameplay,
right? Because that's also part of the in between.
Yeah,
I know what you're
production art,
yeah.
the the art direction in this game is amazing, especially for a PS1 era game.
Yeah.
But like the concept art that they have as like the loading screen images is beautiful.
It's great. I love it. Yeah.
It's so well done. Like, the kind of like 40s style, like propaganda thing, back to the fight, go get them type of thing. It works so well for this. And I just love how it looks. And like, even when you're like loading a mission, when you first load it, you see almost like a movie poster, and it's got like Medal of Honor Underground, like the logo, and then Manon standing beneath the arch in Paris. I forget the name of the actual arch. It's that very famous arch. It's not the Eiffel Tower. I forget what it's called.
Yeah, I should know this.
I don't know geography for shit, so I apologize to any French listeners out there. But she's standing on like a pile of rubble underneath the arch, looking fucking badass.
Yeah.
But then when you finish a mission or whatever, then you see the little interstitial artwork that says "The fight continues."
Yes,
and it's just so good. It's like, and that one is like Manon peering out of like above a broken wall with her like MP40, and she's just like blasting at a tank.
Yeah, a tank. Yeah, that's what I was thinking. That's the first one I thought of too. Yeah,
it's so cool.
I love it.
Oh, you know what? To bring it back to the gameplay, though, and speaking of tanks, this was the first Medal of Honor to have vehicles. The first game did not have any vehicles.
Oh, it didn't. I don't remember that. Interesting. Okay.
Yeah, this one has tanks and half tracks and motorcycles.
Yeah,
and it is a little funny. I remember when I was a kid playing this for the first time, the tanks and the half tracks scared the fuck out of me. And while they are still somewhat challenging now, the tanks are a little comedic watching them fire their big tank shell, because you see like it's very bright and very slow moving. The tank shells, like, they're fast, like you can get hit pretty easily, but if you just kind of strafe left and right, you have a pretty good chance of just dodging them. The thing that will get you is the machine gun on them. But
that more so. But it's interesting you say that, because about dodging the fire or anything like that, is because the game actually tells you, it gives you a little bit of advice at those like little pre-mission paper slips or whatever you want to call it. Tells you like, oh, watch out, there's going to be whatever the name of the tanks are, I can't remember offhand. You can actually like, you're nimble, you can run around them, it's not fast enough to catch up to you. So it's like they're almost telling you like, risk your life to run around a tank. Like, that's what they're actually they're saying, that's the most effective way, which is interesting, because you can blow them up with regular weapons, Molotovs,
and regular
like
weapons,
that.
and
regular weapons, which is hilarious. But it actually encourages you to get close-ish to a tank and run in circles around it so that you can dodge the shots.
I mean, honestly, it makes sense because the upper turret moves so slowly. But like, obviously in real life, if you like, unloading 2 clips of a Stig into a tank isn't going to make it explode in real life.
Exactly. Yeah.
In this game, it does. And also, if you get a 50 cal, that was always my go-to move, because almost every tank fight has some type of machine gun nearby. There's one mission where you have to take out 3 tanks in the level, and that one they don't do that for every single one. But they give you Panzerfausts, and there's a lot of ammo for it. So you just kind of have to pop out from the side, shoot it with the Panzerfaust, duck back, reload, pop out again, kill some enemies as they're coming around, stuff like that. The game does a really good job of kind of breaking up the gameplay. Like the first game, there's a lot of sameness to it, and I still love the first game, but this game, like Underground, had such a good variety of just like run and gun sections with set pieces on machine guns, with heavy tank fights, with stealth missions, with like sniper stuff. Like they had such a good amount of mission variety, and it's like playing through it again, I was surprised at how varied it was, considering this is only the second game in the series, and they really tried some new things. And it's also crazy, this game was developed at the same time that the PS2 Medal of Honor Underground was in development at the same time. So they were kind of getting like they weren't quite the lesser of the two teams per se. I'm not talking about talent wise, but in terms of
Budget
team
and
size,
stuff.
like
Yeah.
budget and stuff, but the team was very dedicated to this. I remember reading that interview. The developer was just talking about how everyone really just genuinely cared about this project and was trying to get it done, which
Well,
is
with
really
all the
cool.
background stuff that you were talking about, it's that's what it feels like. Like you can tell that that's what it is. Like there's lots of detail in this that they didn't need to do, and they absolutely went for it. Yeah, it really adds to it, honestly.
The at the end credits, by the way, and speaking of like that attention to detail and whatnot, remember how I said they interviewed like actual French resistance fighters?
Mhm.
If you watch the credits, you can watch it at any time. You don't need to beat the game. You can just watch the credits.
Oh, I should have done
Um,
that.
they have video footage of the interviews of the women, and there's a whole bunch of them. It's all these women resistance fighters who were women who worked in the war effort at the very least back at the time. And remember, this was filmed in like the 90s, so they were probably, I'm going to guess, in their 70s at that point.
Oh yeah, I'm watching it right now. That's awesome.
Isn't that so cool? Like I remember watching it after I
shit.
beat it on stream, and I was blown away by the fact that they included it. Like the amount of reverence for for the subject matter is just, it's so nice to see.
Yeah.
And you don't really think about, like, you think of course they should treat it with reverence, but like war games are so not done like that anymore. Unless like you might have, your Wolfensteins, which are meant to be over the top, fictional, what's the word I'm looking for? Like,
exaggerated,
like fictional history. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Like, what is it?
alternate history.
Alternate history. Thank you. I could not think of the word. It's like the Man in the High Castle is like that alternate history show. It's crazy how much reverence they had for the subject matter in this game. But anyway, real quick, jumping back to the vehicles though, I want to talk about. I mentioned that you can take out the vehicles with just about anything. Some levels you only have Molotov cocktails. Can we just talk for a second how goddamn useless the Molotov cocktails are?
They even, I mean, the grenades a little bit less so, but yeah, the Molotovs are, I don't know. It's like she just sort of places it on the ground in front of her.
Yeah, there's no arc to it. Like you hurt yourself more easily
Yeah,
than you do anything else.
I don't get it. And like, I thought, okay, I'm going to aim, really high up into the sky. So maybe it's that kind of mechanic where like, you try to change the arc of it or whatever. And it only slightly helps. So you might as well just pull out the gun instead, because you have to get so close anyway for it to be effective in any way whatsoever. Like it's cool to have it as an option, but it's not there, sadly.
And the frustrating thing is, you can, if you hold down the throw button longer, she will throw it farther. But it's still, it was so hard to really understand which direction you were throwing anything.
Yeah.
Or like which distance, I should say, not direction. Direction was easy.
Yeah.
The distance was very hard to gauge on that.
Yeah, I never got like a full feel for it, honestly. I didn't. That or the grenades. So the grenades, I think do they bounce a little bit? You can bounce them off the wall a little bit and stuff. So I think like there's something to that where you can have a little bit more control or variety with them and stuff. But the Molotov cocktails specifically, you're right, where I had trouble with.
Now, in talking about grenades, I think this is a good time to bring this up. Now, the first Medal of Honor did this, but I love to shout it out. The Medal of Honor series is one of the things it's famous for, is their enemy AI. Because, back at the time, you had GoldenEye where if you shot a guy, you might see them grab like their shoulder or their leg or something like that. This game also had that, and a little bit more accuracy. And we'll get into that with your end of level grading, which I think we should touch on too.
Yes.
But what's also crazy is with the grenades. Like if you throw a grenade at an enemy, they might kick it back at you, or they might kick it back at you, or they might jump on top of it to protect their comrades and stuff like that. Same thing if they're about to throw a grenade. If you're able to kill the enemy before they throw it, then the grenade falls out. And then if there's any allies nearby, they either may start running for cover, or they may jump on top of it, or they'll just kick it at you. Like I love the AI in this game where it added so much variety, and like you didn't quite know what the enemies were going to do all the time. Other times, like if you kill an enemy and they're while they're shooting at you, their finger will stay on the trigger and it just kind of keeps shooting afterwards.
Yeah, they're like falling to their knees, and the
Yeah,
gun is still firing off, and it's not like just for show. If you walk in the line of fire, like you'll get hit. You will get
yeah.
hit by it. Which is like was a little annoying the first time it happened. I was like, oh, really? Is that? But yeah, it makes sense. Yeah, sure. Like
Mhm.
works. I totally get it. I was again, because I didn't know anything about this game going in, or very very little. I was surprised and delightedly, delighted by the fact that when you shoot someone's arm, they're grabbing their arm. When you shoot them in the crotch, they grab their crotch. Like the whole like different body parts and firing at their hands and their legs and things like that. I thought that the AI and the way that the enemies responded to you was varied. Like even if you died and you restarted a level, every enemy might be placed initially in the same place, but their reaction to you isn't always the exact same, which I found was interesting. And that might depend if you're slightly to the left or slightly to the right. I'm not really sure how it was coded or whatever, but there's a few levels where I died a few times and I was like, okay, I got this. Now I know where everyone is and how they're going to react. But that wasn't actually the case. They sometimes were hiding behind corners, or like you said, grabbing their grenades and throwing them back at you. And last time they just didn't have the time to do that or whatever. That alone is already variety. It was far less predictable than I thought it was going to be, even though most of the stages are pretty linear.
Mhm. It's honestly impressive to me how like just I don't know, like this game has always just impressed me how forward thinking a lot of their design choices were too. Um just the even like the level layouts, they're very linear, but they're very varied in the sense like they'll have spots that you crouch down and like go through things like to make you feel like you're part of this like network of tunnels, or like going through a
Yeah.
hedgerow or something like that.
Yeah.
Just there's just so many aspects of this game that just feels forward thinking, whether it's the enemy AI that we were just talking about or the level design, which, while like I said is linear, it is like the AI, it is varied. You have lots of different like terrain that you walk around on, lots of like take you to a lot of different places visually, whether it's through the forest, whether it's in caves, whether it's in castles. Some of the enemy variety is different, where besides fighting like the Vichy regime or the Nazis themselves, you also fight there's like I'm watching a playthrough of it now. It's in mission 4, where you're like going to this castle and it's dealing with whoever, like this weird branch off of the Nazi party is really into the occult. So there's a bunch of Nazis wearing like Templar armor and shit like that.
I was going to say Templar is the first thing that came to mind too. Yeah.
It looks like that. It looks like Templar
That's
armor.
exactly what it looks like. Yeah.
It's crazy. There's just, I don't know. There's just a lot to love here with the gameplay and how varied it actually is.
Well, I actually think that the level design is like I have at this point, I'm totally fine with games that are more linear. Like for me, this is I don't want to go into too much of a tangent. I've probably even said this on your show before, but I've said it multiple times on my own and in other ways. But a truly like open world game that has a massive map and like whatever, not that the last, couple of open world Zelda games are terrible games in any way, but those types of games are less appealing to me as I sit here right now in the last couple of years than something like God of War, the most recent God of War, the last couple, which are technically open world, but they're more like hub worlds in a way.
Yeah.
This obviously is not that. But the reason why I say that is every once in a while, having a more linear game that also has some slight areas where you can go off and find some ammo or find an unlockable or do a couple other things where you have to go off the beaten path to complete an objective. Like, I like that. That is good. And maybe you're not doing something... Maybe you're not doing something that is way off the main path, but sometimes with the way that some of the smaller objectives in each of these stages are laid out, it almost feels like you're stumbling upon something you weren't supposed to, even though it is a necessary objective. And I think that that's good level design. And then the second you turn around and get back to the main path, then, okay, here's another fight. Nope, here's another objective. Oh, you made it to the exit. but the stages are the right length, I find. I never found that they were too long. A couple are shorter or longer than others. That's fine. No big deal. Like you said, as you get later, they do get more difficult, but it never felt punishing. The stages always felt like you had different ways to approach things, unless it was literally a hallway. And because, like we said, the AI acts fairly differently in a lot of situations, a hallway never felt like the same old. Like, it was interesting because you had someone else with you, or you happen to have more ammo or more grenades that time. You're able to respawn in the stage to start it again. Like, I don't know. I just think that the way everything was laid out and the pace of the game was very well done. Even though I didn't get to the very end, I played the 3/4 of it, let's say. And
I would say even more than that. You're only like one mission away, really.
Yeah, like maybe like 3 or 4 actual levels or stages left, and that's it. Which I do want to finish it because I'm so close to the end, and I've enjoyed it, so I'm going to keep going. But I just didn't get to it before today. But yeah, I liked it. I liked the variation, different locales, different Templars to shoot. Like, why not? It's cool. I like
it. What I want to touch on real quick too, before we get off of gameplay entirely, but we started this section with talking about we were going to talk about some of our favorite levels, and we just kind of like digressed from there, which is fine. Before I tell you what my favorite level was, one of my favorite levels of all time.
Yes, I'm very interested to hear that.
I mean, I don't know if it's going to be that interesting now, but at the time, it was something I just absolutely adored. But before we get to that, I do want to talk about real quick the end level cards, your scoring cards, pretty much.
Yes,
I loved those. So I wish games would bring these back. Basically, for those who don't know what this is, when you finish a level, there's, like we said, there's 3 to 4 missions in every level. When you finish a level, though, it gives you a scorecard, and it generally consists of like how many. It gives you like some of the stats you might see on on a designated menu that you would see in today's games. You have to go to the options and then see what's your accuracy in this game, how many shots have you fired, which type of enemies did you kill, that kind of stuff. But they give you this information at the end of each level, and they even tell you where your shots landed, like right arm, left arm, right leg, left leg, groin, head, torso. Like, they give you different spots and they tell you where you hit, and based off of the locations that you shot at, they give you a gunnery evaluation or a gunnery eval, which is some type of pun. So for example, I'm watching a long play of it right now in the background, and I don't quite get this one because the guy, they called his gunnery eval was a ristocrat, like A-wrist, like WRIST -ocrat.
Yeah.
And you look at, he had 26 headshots, 5 shots in the left arm, 26 shots in the right arm, 20 in the torso, 1 in the left leg, 1 in the right leg, and 9 in the groin.
I guess because a lot of shots hit one of the particular arms. But he also had
26. I guess it's because 26 headshots, 26 right arm, 5 left arm, and 20 in the torso, which are all kind of around that same spot.
Yeah.
I'd be curious, like, what were the evaluations? You know what I mean? Like, what were the evaluation, like, what are the evaluation options? I'm going to look that up real quick. But what was your opinion of, while I'm doing that, what did you think of the evaluations? Did you like that touch, or was it something you weren't that interested in?
Well, I like the way that they did it in this game because yes, they technically give you like a rating or a grade. So generally speaking, like when a game does this, I like the summary, but I don't necessarily like, oh, you got B rank or S rank or A rank. And I know that, is actually in some games that I really enjoy, like the Ninja Gaiden games, for example. I love those games, the ones that came out for like original Xbox and 360 and stuff. Like, there's something about it where I'm like, okay, that's fine. That's what this type of game is. But if you were to take this particular type of like FPS game and all of a sudden give me a score and like the latest Call of Duty, I'd be like, well, like, why? Like, it doesn't add anything for me, and I'm not actually that incentivized to say, hey, I want to go get an S rank instead of a B one or an A instead of a B. Like, I like that this was broken up into those different things. I'm shooting to survive. I'm not. I like sure I might be going for a headshot, but I'm not exactly fantastic at this game or anything. So it's interesting to say like, oh yeah, I hit this many torsos. I got this many headshots. I was able to hit this many legs or whatever. That kind of stuff's fun. And then those little tongue-in-cheek comments at the end I thought were the nice little sort of cherry on top thing. So I like this. It's just another little added feature to a game that didn't need to have a little added feature that already has a decent amount going for it as is. You know, I thought it was I like that. I like that a lot, actually. Am I going to go and try and improve my quote unquote score? No. But I like sitting there and seeing for a couple minutes being like, oh yeah, okay. I could see why I could have done this, or oh yeah, maybe I actually could have survived this spot better. But that's all. It was good. Nice little added touch.
Well, and so there are, besides the gunnery evaluation, which gives you that funny title, they like bottom, you were saying, Dave, they give you the overall like rating, and you have like good, average, good, and excellent.
Yeah, stars right at the top.
The stars. So 1 star, you just complete the level. A good evaluation, you complete the level with 95% of the enemies killed. And then 95% of the enemies, or higher than 95% of the enemies, excuse me. And then excellent is that you kill 95% of the enemies and you finish with above 75% health. So it doesn't matter how much damage
I didn't realize
you
that's
take.
what it was. Okay.
Yeah. So if you save health packs and then you backtrack through the levels, you can actually, and then you get your health back up, you can actually get excellent. It's because it's not based off of time or anything else.
Right. It's not right. Which games that often have like letter scoring or star scoring or, you know, that kind of stuff often are timing you and you don't even know it. And you're like, well, shit, if I knew that and I wanted to get the best score, I would have tried to do this more efficiently. Or, oh shit, now I'm forced to go back and do it again. If you're that type of player, like, you know, at least it's not that. I got a few of the 3-star ones and I actually had no idea that that's what the criteria was.
I'll be honest, I forgot what they were too. I think I might have seen it when I was a kid. It might have been in the manual, but I'm forgetting.
I'm sure. Yeah.
The gunnery evaluation, I'm guessing it's just based off of like where you shot more often, right? You know, head, arms, torso, which legs, arms, that kind of stuff. So this is not a comprehensive list. I found this on a game FAQ from the, you know, gamefaqs.com or whatever. So this is probably not comprehensive, but it's a lot more than I remember. So if you had more headshots, you would have gunnery evaluation names like head waiter, decongester.
Oh, I got that a couple times.
Mad Hatter. I like that one.
Oh, yes.
If you had more shots in the arm, you would have aristocrat, Kablooey Armstrong. I like that one. I got Kablooey Armstrong a few
I don't know
times.
if I got that one. That's great.
Disarmor and armpitter.
Oh, I got armpitter. That's one I remembered. Yeah.
If you had more torso shots, you have abdomen. Okay, abdominizer. Abdominizer. That's what it is.
Oh, abdomen. Yeah. Okay.
If it's another, there's a few more torso ones. It's Jock O'Lantern.
Yes.
And this one's great. Napoleon blown apart.
Like what's so funny about this is like it's really easy to laugh at this sort of like, you know, dad joke sort of thing, but like it's actually a little bit strange that it comes in a game like this that we've
talking about how reverent it is for source material.
It's so funny
right?
that it's in there. Like I'd expect it in Wolfenstein, honestly.
Right.
Like that's or Doom or something. You know, like that's what this should be from. I wonder if it's probably just them just having some fun, you know. But the developers just having some fun, obviously. But it's interesting that it's placed in a game like this that takes history so seriously and does it so well. If you know, for the most part, at least, yeah.
The last two they have here is if you got more legs, it's Sir Limps-a-Lot. It's not bad. And for groin, you have palm frites. Palm frites, you know, like the French fry type of
palm
thing.
Frites, yep.
Palm frites, yeah, that's what it is.
Right, that's literally French fries are palm frites. That's what, or frites at least. Frites are fries.
I wonder why. Like, I guess if it's groin because it's like his French fry.
Palms are apples. Palms are apples. That's why.
Oh.
So you're frying their apples, I think is what that means.
Oh my god.
Yeah. Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah. Which is great. That's
That's a more cultured joke than I am.
That's just
That joke has more culture than I'll ever have in my entire life.
is it spelled Pomme or
It's
POM?
PALM.
Okay. So
Palm.
never mind. So Palm POMM or MME is apples. So I was wrong. Okay.
Oh,
Yeah. Interesting. Palm
palm
frying
fruits.
your
It's,
palms. I don't know. Okay, never mind. Okay.
I don't
I don't
know.
know. I like the way that I thought it was actually.
Yeah, I do too. That makes more sense. If
Yeah.
it's a whole
Or
bunch
maybe they
of,
weren't allowed to do that. I don't
yeah,
know. Maybe there was something they had to spell it differently. I wouldn't be
I don't
surprised too.
know.
Yeah.
So the last thing I want to touch on, I keep saying last thing. More things just keep popping in my mind. I mentioned this in the first Medal of Honor episode, but I want to repeat it here. There's something about I've noticed this with like FPSs of this era,
Mhm.
and I kind of miss it, where there's this bizarre loneliness in them. And what I mean by that is because the processing power that you couldn't have a lot of enemies on screen at once, and it's not like you had the memory to like have them respawn constantly. So when you go through a level and you take out all the enemies, they don't infinitely respawn. So if you ever have to backtrack, let's say you forgot an objective or you're looking for health so that way you can get above that 75% health rating for your level evaluation, you walk through it and it's just empty. Like you're walking through empty streets, and you'll hear sounds of dogs in the background, and you'll hear gunfire off in the distance and explosions off in the distance, or like random yelling and whistles and other stuff. It's really haunting. Like it's honestly a little like unsettling, and I don't know if that was intentional to make you feel like more unsettled with what's happening with the events of the game, or if it's just a byproduct, like a happy accident type of thing. But
Right.
I
Yeah.
kind of
Yeah.
miss that in first person shooters. I miss that, like first person shooters now, everything is always frenetic. And don't get me wrong, I love that. I love how Doom and Wolfenstein, and I haven't played a Call of Duty in a while, but I love that first person shooters have this very high energy frenetic pace. But I miss the era of almost quietness. So it's like I think even in Doom 2016, you can backtrack through the level and there's not a lot of enemies, but you still have that like
It's
the
still
metal.
very fast paced. Yeah.
Yeah. And in this, there's almost like a sense of like meditation as to like going back as to like what you've just done, like all the people you killed. And I don't think that's intentional, mind you, but it's very surreal and like uncomfortable. And I know it's nostalgia talking more or less, because these are the games that I grew up on, but I still kind of miss it. I still kind of miss that empty feeling after like you go through a level and like you can just backtrack and like just look at the artwork and look at the environments and look at the world around you. But without enemies trying to kill you and stuff like that. It's very weird and odd, but I kind of miss it. Did you experience anything like that when you were playing?
Well, you know what it is? I don't know that I actually that it came to the forefront in the same way it did for you, but as you explain it, yes, I absolutely experienced it, because there were a couple points where I missed like the first objective, for example, and I was like, oh, now I got to backtrack. Luckily, as I mentioned earlier, some of the stages are not very long. Because they're so linear, you're not really going to get lost. Like maybe you might take one wrong left turn or something, but you can pretty much course correct and find that last objective and blow up that box or take the photo of that thing or whatever it might be and be on your way without having the enemies having to hound you and respawn and all that kind of stuff, right? But I think the first thing that comes to mind as you mention it is the creation of the atmosphere of it, because the game is very dark, and because you are a spy, most of this game, whether you are playing a level where you're supposed to be more stealthy or not, is happening at night, or it's happening in the back alleys of places or in caves, like you've mentioned before, and stuff like that. And I think with those extra, we'll talk about sound and stuff in a sec too, but like it, whether there's gunfire going off or not from your gun or enemies that you're fighting with, there's also stuff like you mentioned happening in the background. So when you backtrack, you definitely have, or you have a second to go collect another health pack or something, you definitely have more of an opportunity to notice that, but it's always there. And that's another one of those touches that the developers made sure that they had in there to really hammer the point home of what you're doing, and that there's a level of importance to what you're doing, and that it needs to happen under the shade of night, you know? So I think that adds to this particular game, but as you mentioned it for like the games of this era, yeah, you're right. And it's interesting how it gives you like that particular sort of nostalgic feel, where when I think of games of this era, the first thing I'm always going to think of is GoldenEye, because it's the one I played the most or whatever.
Mm-hmm.
But it wasn't that. It wasn't this type of game. It wasn't going for this type of atmosphere, and guys respawn out of the walls all the time, right? It's not going for the same idea, but I did experience it, and I did notice that those subtle touches were there and made things feel, I don't know if more real is the right way to say it, because, you know, they could have very easily just done some light music and you kind of just, you know, hear your footsteps through the alleyway or through the back streets, or, you know, down this path or through those set of bushes or whatever. You know, you hear some crickets or you hear the dog barking or whatever, like you said. And like those things, you know, it adds depth to everything and more of that realism that we've been talking about from the beginning. So I don't know if it works extra because it's this game and the attention to detail that they took in so many other ways, but of this era, yeah, it definitely, as you say it, I'm like, oh yeah, you're right. That was far more common out of necessity in some ways. I think you're right.
Yeah, definitely out of necessity.
Yeah, but I think it actually adds to it in the case of this game in particular.
I agree on that. Well, Dave, I think I'm finally ready to talk about my favorite level. Unless, do you have
Let's
any
do it.
levels you want to shout out before I go into mine?
I'm trying to pull up like the exact names and stuff. They're kind of, again, I think most of my memory of the game over the last couple of weeks of playing it happens sort of near the middle, because those are the ones that I played the most recently, and the ones that I those stealth levels we talked about earlier, I actually really liked how you started stealth and then had to shift to being a little bit more, you know, in your face, shooting the enemies in front of you. I liked those. So those ones are some of my favorite, but I didn't love the setting of it as much. I'm just not a whole fan of the whole like desert setting. I know you were in like North Africa, I think, at those points and stuff. I don't know. They're just not as interesting to me. So I think it is where you have to find the plans for one of the bombs, I think, or bombers.
That might have been the
one I'm looking up right
Saboteur.
now. Saboteur.
That's like the sixth mission.
Yeah, there's one that's called Plans for Destruction and Sabotage.
Okay.
Those are the ones that I'm pretty sure that's the one.
That's in the middlework Saboteur. Yep, that's exactly the same. Yeah.
Yeah. So those two, they're back to back. Plans for Destruction. So you start it says mission 6.
Yep.
Middlework Saboteur. The first one's Plans for Destruction. You're kind of like outside, in like a cave like area. Then there's like a small town kind of in it, and then you go underground into like a underground system that you have to sabotage where like the actual bombs are or something. Those ones I really enjoyed. I think they were varied. You get to go to a couple different locations. One of them, I think the first one's a little bit long, so when I died a couple times, it was kind of like, oh shit, I got to do it again. But I thoroughly enjoyed what I needed to do and the settings themselves. So I like those levels the best. I think those are the ones that stand out from top of mind anyway.
It's funny that you gravitated towards Mission 6, Dave, because my favorite level is in Mission 6 as well.
Hey.
The one that was like my favorite level for a while. It's the final level in Mission 6. It's called Sidecar Shootout.
Yes, I remember this.
I loved this level as a kid, as like a teen, just because the idea of like it basically, you know, like fed into my action movie loving preteen wet dream. I don't know. Like, you know,
but it is very much an action movie scene.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, it's 100% like it's the definition of a set piece. That's what it is.
You are riding in the sidecar of a motorcycle. You have the mounted machine gun in the sidecar, and there's someone else driving.
Yep.
And you're driving down this mountain while just constantly spraying at enemies, just spraying and praying the whole way down. And periodically, you have to stop, get out, go sabotage something, hop back in, continue on going down. So it kind of breaks up the pace a little bit. It's not just a full level of nothing but sidecar shootout of just, driving down a mountain and shooting out.
Which, when this mission starts, I thought that's what it was going to be. And it very easily could have been. And a lot of games would do that. Like, oh, this is just a way to break up the other type of gameplay or whatever. But they actually go out of their way to make sure that you also have something varied to do just within this one stage itself, which I agree is great.
I loved this mission so much. I don't know what it was, but for some reason as a kid, it's so weird to be like interested in these things like the way I was as a kid, because like now I think about like, well, this was, people died. This was war,
Yeah.
But meanwhile, I'm just like, I love snipers. Snipers are so cool. And, or in this instance, like, I love being on this mountain machine gun, just like mowing people down. I'm like, well, and now as in my 30s, I'm like, well, this is still fun, but this has a whole lot more weight behind it.
Yeah. There's more going on here. Yeah.
Yeah. You just don't have that life experience just yet, and that's fine. But I loved this mission, man. I loved driving down. You go to those launch sites to blow up some V1 rockets, and then you exit the town. And it actually gets a little tricky at some parts, just because there are like some of the enemies, it's hard to like turn fast enough to shoot at them, and if they get behind you, then just good fucking luck, because you still have to take out the enemies that you're driving towards, but you're still getting shot at the enemies that you missed. So it's almost like pick your poison. And I almost always just let the guys that I missed go unless there was a ton of them, because
I remember doing that. 'Cause I think I died in this stage at least once, maybe twice. And I ended up doing that anyways. I think that's what I did too. I just sort of like moved on.
Well, because it's not worth it. If you miss like one guy, it takes so long to turn around to get them that by the time you've gotten them, you've gotten shot in the shit up by a bunch of other dudes that are coming towards you at that point. So it almost makes more sense to take a couple shots from the guy behind you than and then take out like the 4 or 5 guys that are running towards you.
Yeah, it's like a pick your battles type thing,
So that was my favorite mission, though. Playing through it again, I actually was very impressed, considering like this type of set piece you would see in Call of Duty, you would see in Uncharted, you would see in name your action game now. Like you would see this kind of set piece now, but this was done back in 2000, and I'd be curious. That would be a fun thing to like research, like the history of the set piece in like gaming. Like how do you like, can there be a set piece in like a 2D game? Like how would you define a set piece in a 2D versus 3D game, where you know what I mean, where
like, is it just is a boss fight a set piece in like Metroid, for example,
right?
Like,
I think
or
you
like
have
like a chase scene, something's exploding and you have to run away from the stuff
like
behind
Metroid,
you.
Like the Metroid end mission, I would say is a set piece, like where you have to escape the base from blowing up. That's a set piece. So it does exist part of this, but I'm trying to think of like,
but in a different way though. Like that's I know what you're saying. Like that feels different.
Shooters, I don't think I don't know first person shooters well enough to say this for certain, but this is the earliest one I can think of that did this kind of a set piece where you have like this vehicle driving down while like taking like mowing down enemies. Like I don't know why, but for some reason I just feel like this is very technically impressive for the PS1. If you really
I think it was, and it runs smoothly too, which makes a difference, right? Like that's the thing, is you can have set pieces, you can have lots of action going on, but it needs to run pretty smooth in order for it to be effective. And I look, did I play this on a PlayStation? No, I didn't, but I did what I could, and I played it as real as I possibly could, or reasonably. It ran totally fine, and I never saw any like there's no texture problems, there's no like weird enemy reactions or anything. Like everything still ran smoothly, and it never felt like something was placed in a weird way or there was less than happening in the stage. There wasn't less enemies, there wasn't less detail or any of that kind of stuff. Like it was a regular stage, and it wasn't just, let's just place you in some motion and that's it. I think though, one of the things, maybe I shouldn't keep going back to this, but
no, you're fine.
Here's the 64 guy talking about another 64 game, but
No, use it as most people would use GoldenEye or Perfect Dark as a reference point, so I think
Yeah,
it's
but
worth it.
what's the name of the stage where you use the tank in GoldenEye?
Yeah,
That's
yeah.
kind of a set piece because you do drive the tank around. You can choose not to, but you can get into the tank. You drive around. You can get out if you want. It's not quite the same thing, but in a way, that's a bombastic set piece.
Mm-hmm.
But it's also James Bond, so it's kind of like everything is kind of supposed to be a set piece because it's 007. But that's the first thing that came to mind, also because it involves a vehicle, and that was 97, right? So
Yeah. I don't know, but I feel like that set piece was more slower paced. I'm not trying to knock it, mind you.
oh no, it
Like
was. It 100%
it's a
slower
fun
paced.
it's a fun level, but
Yeah.
I remember that also being a little bit more like you're playing a regular level but with a tank now. This
Yeah.
is like
Yeah.
very
Yep.
straightforward. Like you're
Yep.
driving down a very linear hallway at a fast speed. Enemies
Yep.
are having to be rendered, and environments and enemies are having to be rendered very quickly. And de-rendered very quickly, whether it's because you killed them or they're disappearing behind you.
Yep.
I'm very impressed by this level on a technical aspect. I think it honestly blows me away that they were able to achieve this on the PS1.
Yeah, and that's the other thing. Let's keep remembering this is PS1, not 2. You know, there is a big difference there. There was definitely a big
Mhm.
difference.
Which I believe
Yeah.
also had less processing power than the N64. Like it,
Yeah, they could fit more stuff on the actual disc than the cartridge. That's really where
yes,
the
that was
difference.
the big
That's where the
trade-off.
difference slide. Yeah, yeah,
That's just wild to think about. But
yep.
all right. Unless there's any other things you want to talk about with gameplay, Dave, I guess we could wrap up with our discussion on like visuals and sound and whatnot.
The only other thing is because we discussed this because you started playing this before I did. I think I did maybe like a week or a couple days later or something, and you had a recommendation of the control scheme to use.
Oh my
'cause
god!
I think,
Yes, thank you. I was even thinking about it, and I just didn't bring it up. Yes,
yeah, the controls because we were kind of talking about how some levels were difficult, and you have to go back and maybe collect some health and things, and like. So I played this with a PlayStation 5 controller. So I tried to play it with a PlayStation controller. It's very early dual stick controls in 2000.
Yes. Well, did you change it to configuration 4 like I recommended?
I did. So I what I did was I tried the default, which I believe is you strafe or like the default, like
the left joystick moves backwards and forwards and looks left and looks right, and then the right joystick straves left and right but looks
and
up
I think
and
so
down.
Do the bumpers? Do the bumpers do that too? I can't remember exactly which
but
one.
then
It was.
X is fire. I remember on that.
Yes. Which because of the way that the sort of looking, is controls. Okay, I guess it makes sense that X is fire. Okay, that's fine. Or A if you used an Xbox controller, or had a Medal of Honor game, so that's fine. But yeah, I switched over to 4, and yes, it's as modern as you're probably going to get, I think. Mm-hmm. But I did still struggle with the aiming more than I thought I would. It is an improvement. You're right. It was the way to go. So if you are going to boot up this game and try it, I don't know what the control scheme is for the original one, but for this one, it's worth. I play the first level in the default, see if it works for you. Sometimes it's sort of like, okay, I want to play it the way it was quote unquote meant to be played, but control scheme 4 is also part of the game. It's not like you're cheating or anything. So that's fine. So try it out, see how it feels. It's probably going to be a little bit weird and frustrating, but then just switch to 4. It's much more manageable and definitely is an improvement. You can get through it easier. Every once in a while I still stumbled I don't know what it was. I don't know if I just like.
No, I think so. I think where this game really,
the game. I don't know.
Where the controls of this game really take a hit are shooting from the hip. Like if you play like Call of Duty or you play, even more modern Medal of Honors, you can just run around without having to aim down the sight or like quote unquote aim, and just you're pretty accurate. Like the thing that I noticed, and I don't know if it's because I do own an original copy, but for sake of ease and to be able to play on stream, because at the time now I have a retro tank that I can actually set up my old consoles and stream them live on Twitch and put it all in HD and all that whatnot. But when I was playing this, I did not have it, so I even though I owned a physical copy, I actually had to play a ROM. and I don't know if this was a byproduct of using an emulator / a ROM, but I did find that it was really hard to aim from the hip. Like you didn't really have a sight when you didn't have,
No,
you
there's no
didn't have a
reticle.
sight or
There's no
a
reticle.
reticle.
Yeah.
But if you do aim, it almost feels like the way this game is meant to be played is that you turn to face the enemy, and then you aim with the sight and the reticle, and so you kind of stand still when that's happening.
Yeah.
But the reticle moves surprisingly fast, and it's surprisingly accurate. Like you don't, like, I felt constantly in control of that thing when I was playing it. So once I got used to it, which it does take a little bit, but it didn't take too long. Once you get used to that, where like you shouldn't really be firing from the hip, you always have to aim, which causes you to. It's a very like early PS or first person shooter thing where if you're quote unquote aiming with a reticle like you do in GoldenEye or anything else like that, like your character freezes and then the reticle appears on screen and you just kind of like you move it around the screen
You
to pick where
steer
you
the
wanna
gun,
aim.
basically.
You steer
is
the
what it
gun,
is.
yeah.
Yeah.
And this, I was actually surprised at how well that worked because they generally don't throw a lot of enemies on you at once, which
No,
really
that's
helps.
true. That's true. It's like 3 or 4 at the
Yeah.
most, and that's if you like, kind of fall behind and eliminating them before you get to that exact spot you're standing.
So they kind of design the game around those limitations where they don't throw a lot of enemies at you. They throw a lot of enemies in total, but it's never all at once. It's only like 2 to 3 tops. Usually it's only like 1 or 2.
Yeah, it's really not a ton. I don't know what it was. I don't know if it was maybe I wasn't quick enough to get to that reticle steering like you're talking about or whatever. It's true though, because it's like you pull up the crosshair and it feels like it's like this huge crosshair. Like there's this huge gap between all the 4 lines that are in it. But if you try and like shoot someone in the head that's pretty far away, you'll probably hit them. Like the accuracy is pretty good if they're kind of just standing still. Like it is a little bit lenient in a good way, because I think if it was any more difficult, it probably would get more frustrating. Maybe it's just me. I'm just sort of my limitations of the ability to be able to pull it off and stuff. I don't think it was a massive problem. It just took, maybe it's just my own mental block that took me longer to get back in that mode than I thought it would. So the first couple stages are not overly complicated. They don't have a ton of enemies like you're saying, but for some reason I had a harder time with them. Like they weren't impossible, but it took me a lot longer to get through those first couple than I thought it would, pretty much. And I don't think that that's bad design, because that's just how it was at the time. And it's just a taste of the way things were. And that's totally fine. I prefer to experience the way that things were rather than like, hey, let's put a mod on this to make it 100% modern. Then I feel like you're not quite getting a taste of what this game was in 2000. And I'd prefer to sort of have that experience be somewhat authentic, at least.
It's definitely worth at least trying in the original control scheme and trying to get that authentic feel, like you're saying, Dave. But I don't know. I don't think it's just you with this control scheme. I think it is hard to aim in general. Like even like we said, we switched up to configuration 4, but it does take some getting used to. I don't think it's just you with having a hard time aiming at all. It can be a little finicky. Now, what I was going to say real quick, the first Medal of Honor did have the same thing. You could switch over to this same control scheme. I don't know if it was configuration 4, but I was really surprised because that game came out in 99. And so, Halo is the game that popularized that control scheme. Now it's pretty much what every single game uses. Like almost every third person or first person game uses this control scheme. Third person or first person action game, uses this control scheme in some way. And it's kind of cool to see how it existed before it became popular. Like Halo popularized it from what I remember, but I could be wrong. But I feel like
it was the one that was
honestly not the
revolutionized it. Like really, it perfected it, right? And then it just got iterated on as we've gone from there. And Does it need to change drastically? I would argue no, and that's great. It's cool that it started in 2001. That's awesome.
As we've seen here, it started before that. It just Halo popularized it.
Right. And there's something about, I don't know if it's just the way that the joysticks work. There's something or whatever it was. It just it's still like, yes, it's a different console. It's a different console generation. There's a lot of reasons why it would be different. But if you played Halo in its original form and you played
Still
this game,
kind of good.
Halo feels better. Like it 100% feels better, right? So
absolutely,
that's just how it is. That's just at least with that particular joystick feel. The rest of it, you can argue whatever you want as far as how the game plays, but the two joystick feel of aiming and running in an FPS, Halo was like the top notch perfection sort of thing at that time.
It was like a revelation.
Exactly.
Yeah. But all right, is there anything else you want to touch on that I missed with the gameplay?
No. I just want to make sure I mentioned that the control scheme, because I do think that
that's very
it's something
important
to make note of, and something that you pointed out even before I even knew. And I was like, okay, great. I'm happy that you pointed that out, because I don't even know if I would have checked. I would have just assumed that's just how it controls.
Yeah, no. When I was replaying the first one, I was like, holy shit! I can't get used to this again.
How did I do this?
How did I do this the first time? And but I also didn't have 20 years of being used to the same control scheme.
Yeah.
So let's move on to our final segment for this episode. We are going to be talking about the overall visuals and music and aesthetic and just kind of the vibes, the aesthetic vibes of this game. And I'll kick this one off first just because I don't always have a lot to say about this, but this time I kind of do. So I want to take advantage while my brain's actually functioning on this.
Yes.
So I want to actually start off with the music for once. The composer for this game, as with the first one, was Michael Giacchino, who would later go on to be one of the biggest composers in the world right now. He did The Incredibles, he did Up, he did like some Marvel movies. He's done a ton of Disney movies in general. I think he might have even done some Star Wars. I'd have to double check on that though.
Nice.
The man is insane. Like he's a legend. And while he did not get his start on Medal of Honor, he actually, I think one of his earliest credits was a video game though, for like either the Super Nintendo or the Genesis. But the Medal of Honor was his like big, like, I don't know, I want to say it was his first orchestral score, but I could be wrong on that. But I love this game's soundtrack so much. I think it works so well. We were talking about that eerie, empty feeling. They do such a good job of the sound design, including the soundtrack into it. I mean, where like you'll hear the little musical stings where dun, 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 dun. Oh, that's Star Wars.
Dun, dun, dun,
yeah,
dun.
no, I was going dun, 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 dun. That's Star Wars though. But like you can hear like little musical stings in the background periodically. It just it keeps the mood of the level, and then when the melody actually like kicks in, it's really intense. It's a beautiful soundtrack. Like I love Michael Giacchino's the way he writes his melodies, where there's like some tracks that are very melodic and like they or driving. I think it's not in this game, but it's in the first one. The half track chase is like fantastic in this game. Excuse me. Let me see if I can like look up some of the music pieces in this that I really liked. The motorcycle chase is really good. I also really just like the main theme, which is just called May 10th, 1940. Just there's so much. Escape from Casablanca is also really good. There's just a lot of great stuff in this soundtrack, and I love that it has a good mixture of like Steven Spielberg style, like John Williams-esque type of music, but also it's much more atmospheric than that. It's not all just straight melodies. It's great. It's a fantastic soundtrack. I think it works really well. I think that even to tie it in with the sound design, how they integrate it into the levels themselves, I think is perfect. Where they'll have like specific stings, like when your brother dies at the first level, you'll hear this really tragic music. It's just great. Like so much of this soundtrack is fantastic, and I really love it. And it Medal of Honor, I think, will always have a place in my heart for its soundtrack because it was one of the first times that I ever noticed the music in a game, like where I actually like paid attention. When oh shit, this is like really this is really good. I always wanted I was in band in high school, and I always wanted my like high school concert band to play music from Medal of Honor, but there's no way that my my teacher, my
let you
whoever,
play video game music. Like
he wasn't necessary. I also wanted them to do Final Fantasy as well, but obviously like that, like there's no way they would do that. But yeah, I love this soundtrack, man. I can't get enough of it. Any thoughts from you on the soundtrack before we get into visuals?
I think it's great. I think it's very noticeable. What I really sound and sound design in general. I think especially in games, sometimes it does its job when you don't even notice it. Like you know what I mean? It's very subconscious. It works on a subconscious level. I think that's more sound design than it is soundtrack or score. But this, like, there's music and then there's a score, and this game has a score, in my opinion. Like you said, very Spielberg-esque, and I'm reluctant to drop John Williams in comparison to anybody because he's just like the master, but I totally understand what your point was. I'm not saying you're wrong. I just
no, I'm not trying to say it's more iconic by any stretch.
No,
like,
no,
Williams,
I know.
Obviously,
I'm just making my point of how much I love John Williams. That's all. It's more about that. I think it's fantastic. I think the music in this is great. I am 100% on par with you. I think it's very good for this time as well. I think one of the reasons why it's great that it's on PlayStation is, in some ways the 64 had some better sound design opportunities and better music in some games, but with a CD at the time, you could do a lot more with music and have scores that had more resounding, depths and things like that. That's one of the advantages to having a disc-based console like this at the time. So that's great, and it really shines. And with set pieces like we've been talking about a couple times, you got to have that music. It just brings you into those situations even more, and it's very obvious in this game in a good way. And also when you mentioned the guy's name, I remember looking it up as I played it and then totally forgot until you mentioned it. Yes, this composer has done amazing work. And when you mentioned Marvel, I was like, oh yeah, what did he do in Marvel that's standing out to me right now? He did Werewolf by Night or Werewolf by Midnight from a couple years ago. That like black and white sort of short film that was like 45 minutes that Disney did, an adaptation of one of like the Marvel stories. It's all black and white. He directed it and did the music for it. And it's really, really good. If you want to have like a thriller but Marvel based Halloween watch, highly recommend it. It's one of the best things that they've done, I think. And he was the one that put it together. He's done a lot. He did a lot of video game work, Lion King, Jurassic Park, Gargoyles, which is cool, stuff like that for Genesis. And then it looks like he got his break when J.J. Abrams found him and asked him to do the music for Alias. So that's when
that's what it was.
Yeah, and then he got into doing. He did some stuff on Lost, which obviously was Abrams
Huge.
As well.
Yep.
And like you said, Incredibles and stuff. So yeah, this guy's obviously got a great career ahead of him, and he's already done a lot as well. Yeah, Rogue One he worked on. Great. Coco. Jeez, man.
Right.
This guy's amazing. Holy shit.
It's funny
the
because
Batman. Oh, the Batman has great, like the most recent Batman movie. That has great music. Holy shit.
He is a fantastic composer, and it's weird because he's someone that simultaneously gets a decent amount of credit from like the general public, but then at the same time, there's a large segment of the general public who's like, who's this guy? Like,
sure,
people know John Williams obviously for very, very obvious reasons, just, I'm not even going to list them all. You can just Google his credits. If you
say Jurassic Park, Star Wars, Indiana Jones,
Harry Potter.
Let's just list all of them.
I know, right? Let's just have a John Williams podcast.
Let's just do that. Hey, anytime you need one, I'm here.
but like Michael Giacchino, or I think that's how you pronounce his name, just like, I remember being obsessed with his music before he became famous for everything else, or before actually I knew he was famous for, because I think I was listening to the soundtrack a lot even when the Incredibles were out, but I didn't know he composed the Incredibles at the time. Like, I was obsessed with his music because of these games, not because of Pixar or Disney or
Yeah.
J.J.
I think
Abrams.
sadly, unless you are John Williams, that is largely what happens with composers and people who create soundtracks. Like, that's
I mean, you
just
get
how the
Danny Elfman
general
and Hans
public.
Zimmer too, but that's
Yeah,
about it.
exactly. Yeah, unless you're those people, generally speaking, the general public does not know who the people are, even if it's great work. So that's why like award shows and stuff, it's nice. You can think what you want about award shows. At least they shine some light on the people that do great work like this. This is one of those names and one of those people that has been doing it since the late 90s mid 90s with video games. So there you go.
Fun fact, I actually interviewed one of his, like, I don't know if protege is the right word, but I interviewed a guy named Chad Seiter, Seiter. You can listen to that interview. It was a couple of years ago. I want to say it might have been 2020 or 2021. And I interviewed him about something else. But he worked with Michael Giacchino very closely for years, so much so that I believe he said he was his best man at his wedding, or he officiated his wedding. Like, Chad, he got Michael Giacchino either was the best man at Chad's wedding or officiated Chad's wedding. I mean, so like they're very good friends. I do this for all the guests that I interview. I ask him, like, hey, is there any questions you just want me to avoid? And he was very polite. He's just like, you don't ask me too much about Michael. I'm friends with him. He's one of my best friends, but like, I can't speak for him. I'm like,
Right.
That's totally fair. That is
Right.
absolutely fair. So I didn't have any of those questions. I specifically, even beforehand, I was like, I'm not, like, that's just rude. Like, why would you interview someone else why would you interview someone just to be like, hey, let me talk about your friend to you?
Yeah, that's totally
weird.
fair. Totally fair. And like you said, understandable why that would come up. Understandable, but I totally get their position as well. So actually, I'm just looking up. We can move on from Giacchino, by the way. Giacchino, because he's Italian.
Giacchino, thank you.
His grandparents, I think, or maybe his parents, were from the same part of Italy as my dad. There you go.
Oh, how about that?
Yeah, central Italy, just outside Rome. There you go.
There you go, fellow Italians. Italians.
Oh, what's up?
Oh,
hey, music. Oh,
oh, get out of here! Stand in there with your
what's
shirt.
the matter for your score? Huh? What do you do? Huh? Yeah, anyways.
Oh my god. So the final thing I want to touch on before we wrap this up, Dave, is the visuals. Like, I think this game looks fantastic, but I started off the first segment. I will start off with you here. Just your thoughts on the visuals.
Yeah, I think it's very much of its time, which is fair enough. I think it looks pretty good. I don't know if this. I mean, this is also the stuff that I go through with the 64 as well. When we go through games, like, this is obviously going for the realism, and it's does a pretty good job of it. I do think that the varied levels that we've talked about, the different sort of locales and different, underground, outside, all these types of things, the action set pieces, I think that brings a lot more to it. The stages that are, like, for example, the Northern Africa ones that are sort of towards the beginning of the game, that are very much just sand and stuff, I find those very uninteresting to me. It's kind of the same in other games around this era where it's just, I don't know. It's funny to say they look muddy sometimes when it's like, sand and dirt.
Yeah,
and
it's
stuff.
a PS1 game.
Yeah. And it's just how it is. So I think that the animations are good. We've talked about the enemies, for example. I think that it runs smoothly. I think that the varied levels really add to the fact that, sure, there's only so much you could do with the technology at this time, but at least they created a lot of different environments, and I really enjoyed that. So I think those are that's interesting in itself. And I think the weapons look okay, other than the very large crossbow. And I thought, like, the explosions looked kind of interesting. They look pretty good. Yeah, I don't think I wasn't blown away by it, but I wasn't disappointed as well. It's kind of like in the middle. Like, yeah, that's what I expected.
For me, I love this. I love everything about the visuals of this game, man. I think a lot of it's nostalgia, but I also think, weirdly enough, PS1 graphics are so low poly that they kind of come around to be charming at this point. Like
I
right
think
now, I
there's a lot
actually
of games that have that. I think I could agree. I could agree.
yeah. Well, what's weird is I actually think like PS2 games, bizarrely enough, like PS2 games that went for realism have aged more poorly than PS1 games that go for realism,
Okay.
because I think PS1 is so low poly that there's almost like this bizarre cartoonish art aesthetic to it, versus
Yeah.
PS2, it's not quite Uncanny Valley, but there is a little bit of an element to that. You know what I'm talking about with Uncanny Valley, right?
I do, and I think that I mean, this is kind of visual as well, but like I do think that the animation of the enemies and the way that they fall over or they die or whatever really adds to the way that this game looks. And the cartoony part is what reminded me of this. I just want to throw this in there because I forgot about it before, but sometimes you'll shoot an enemy and he'll like fly back like 5 feet.
Yeah.
And it's like, why that bullet? Why did that bullet do that? I don't understand. Last time I shot that guy, that didn't happen in that way. Like I just used the shotgun on you and you fell to the ground on your knees. And yet I shot the next guy with a pistol and he flew back 5 feet backwards.
You just caught him flat-footed that time.
I just caught him flat-footed that time. Yeah, it was just, the breeze just happened to be blowing in the right direction. So like those things are fun. Like they're trying to make it somewhat realistic or whatever, but like it does, you're right, it does add to that sort of mid 90s to early 2000s charm that this and the 64 carried. And like I've said on my podcast, like it's an awkward generation, like it was a necessary step, but as far as graphical fidelity goes, it's also somewhat awkward, but not necessarily in a bad way.
I think more or less, like you can tell, like in this era, art direction was king. We're like,
yes, that's right. That's right.
In technically all eras, art direction was king. But I feel like with like, for example, like Super Nintendo, right? You could get away with bad art direction if the sprite art was like okay-ish. Like like there's a lot of games that like the sprite art is just boring. They're not bad, but they're not good. And so to me, that just means it has bad art direction. But like you look at it and you're not immediately like grossed out by it. The PS1 and N64, when a game looks bad, oh my God, what am I looking at? It's when the art direction is bad, it's really hard to look at. When the art direction is really good, it, as long as you understand the context at the time that it came out, like it actually, like if you go into, it's kind of like, if you play like Celeste or Shovel Knight, like you go into it knowing it's like a pixel art 2D side scroller, and so you're like, wow, this looks really good for a pixel art 2D side scroller type of thing, and you appreciate the art. It's not even that, it just looks really good in general, and you appreciate it for its artistry that it's trying to achieve. And in a weird sense, I feel like PS1, at least for me, and in some semblance I've seen some indie games like Crow Country kind of vibes with this a little bit. I've never played Crow Country, but I've seen like videos of it, where this low poly aesthetic actually creates some really interesting visuals. And I think indie devs are starting to like tinker with it a little bit. Like indie devs that grew up with the PS1 and N64 and whatnot.
Yeah.
And you can see like what happens when good art direction meets these types of visuals and a little bit higher fidelity. Now you don't get the N64 fuzziness, and you don't get the PS1 warble and stuff like that. But
yeah, things are a little smoother and all that.
Yeah. But yeah, I think to bring it back to this, I think the art direction for this game is absolutely fantastic. Between the cue card interstitials, between just even like the little like hub area where you go to all your different missions, it's a little resistance underground bunker.
Yeah, that's right. The main menu of the game has like charm and like a lot of detail to it and stuff, like an unnecessary step, but a nice one for sure.
And it's fully modeled. It's not just like a still screen. Like you'll see 3D models walking around. You'll see one dude just like cleaning his gun or like maybe reloading it. If you go to where you want to see like some of the movies again, like that you've unlocked through the missions, like the little documentaries, there's a little film projector reel that like you open up and you open up the canister. If you're going into your records, you'll open up, it'll be at a desk with like maybe a metal, like a box for like war medals and stuff on it. Where you can see all your evaluations and whatnot. It's really cool. There's a lot of charm to how this game presents itself. And once again, for a PS1 game, it looks really good for a PS1 game. It is a
It
late one, so
does.
it does
It
have
does. Yeah.
excuse me. It does have that benefit since it is a late PS1 game. But man, I don't know. It just something about it just still works for me. And I think it's definitely nostalgia, but I don't know. Something like I like how even like Metal Gear Solid looks. And I didn't have nostalgia for Metal Gear Solid when I first played that. I played it for the first time back in like 2016 or 2017. And I still
Mhm.
liked how that looked too. Like it was PS1 graphics, obviously, but I still thought it looked pretty decent considering like the art direction. Like obviously in terms of fidelity, if you're going by straight fidelity, it doesn't look good. But if you're going by how it looks visually to the eye, it still looks pretty damn good.
Yeah, I think yeah, I think it's what I expected, but it doesn't mean it looks bad. I actually
Yeah.
think it looks pretty great. And yeah, I think there is a benefit. Like I've said this before with the 64 games too. The later you go, the more they figure out how to work within the limitations of the technology at the time, or the console, or in this case the CD and all those things. So that helps. And like we've said, like maybe we didn't play it on the actual physical disc and console itself, but sometimes ROMs are not exactly the simplest and smoothest transitions, but I never had any problems with any kind of visual fidelity in any way whatsoever, and
Mhm.
glitches and things like that. Like everything ran great, looked fine.
With the exception of
Nothing.
walking through some doorways.
Yeah, there was a couple. Yeah, actually, that's right. There's a couple
That, I
points
don't
where
know
like
why. I don't know if that was an emulator thing because it happened to me too.
I had a couple times where I was like walking down the stairs and I kind of like got clipped on some geometry or something. But I even if that was it's a very small thing, right? There was,
Yeah.
it's not like you couldn't get past it. It wasn't game breaking, but and also for like, I think this goes to the visuals as well, for a game that does often take, if not 90% of the time or something, does take place at night or in darker areas. Nothing felt so dark that I couldn't see. Like there's
Mhm.
enough detail and enough varied, whether it's background, foreground, the enemies, whatever, there's enough there that I never felt like I was struggling to see and understand what I was doing or what was coming at me. And that's something too. That's something to the developers too. That's a task they had to deal with, and I think they made it work.
I agree. Well, we're going to wrap up this episode now. We're going on at the recording time is over 2 hours, but there's going to we had a couple breaks in the beginning, just getting things set up. So who knows what the final runtime is going to be? But we've gone on pretty well, long enough for this one. So Dave, man, thank you once again for joining me. To wrap this up, I want to go with our final thoughts, and I will give you the final word as the guest. You will get the final word on this one. And I'm just going to say, for myself, I'll start off. I love it. If you couldn't tell, I still really like this game. I did not beat the final 8, like the 8th mission, which is like bonus. You don't even play as Manon in that. You play as Jimmy Patterson. But even with that, I really enjoyed my time getting to re-experience this game. I think it holds up pretty well overall, though the controls are a little janky, but it's like PS1 jank, so you kind of forgive it. I can't separate my nostalgia from this. Like the Medal of Honor series is something I'm always going to be hugely nostalgic for. And going back to it all these years later and just seeing the reverence that they gave for the subject matter and how much they deeply cared about it, like interviewing the actual French resistance fighters and including their interviews, like they just interviewed a bunch of women resistance fighters and like war people or women who worked in the war effort and just about what they did. And you can see bits of it in the credits. Just I loved every minute of it. I loved what it represented, and it was a fantastic experience. I'm really happy I got to revisit it for this series. So, Dave, throwing it over to you. Final thoughts on the game?
I think it's definitely something that I was impressed by. Like I said, as we've been talking about it, I think that the whole vibe of being this, underground resistance and stuff, I always kind of like that. Like just in general, that works for me. So it's very cool to be able to place that in reality, or as close to reality as you can get with a game like this. I had a great time. Yeah, sure. There was some funky getting used to the controls or the age of the game or whatever, but that's what I expected as well.
Mm-hmm.
I'm going to go through the rest of it and finish it, because I just, whether the story is the greatest thing in the world or not, like how it wraps everything up or whatever, doesn't matter. I had a good time with it, and I've gone far enough, so I'm going to keep going with it. And it's one of those games that is, I think, definitely worth playing, and definitely people should appreciate, sort of look back and I can appreciate, because there's a whole generation of people now and gamers now that know what quote unquote modern Call of Duty is, and that's
Mhm.
what a FPS, I guess you can call it, war game. I don't think they're war games anymore.
They're
Is
war porn games at that.
Yeah, I wouldn't even use the word war. It's just they're gun games. They're shooting
Mhm.
games. That's kind of what it is, and that's fine. That they have their place. People love them. Great, go for it. But if you want to see where games like that started and how they did it well, and how there was a lot of attention to reality and detail, and like you said, reverence, using that is that's like the word to use. This is a great game to check out, and early Call of Duties as well. But this one in particular feels like there's a lot of reality to base it off of, that creates a lot more levity and depth and appreciation for this time and for people
Mhm.
like this that this is based off of. I really do think that went a long way for me enjoying it, and I still had a good time. I still enjoyed what it gave me, and yeah, I'm happy I got to play it. This is one that's I'm gonna remember playing for sure, because being able to play it as an older adult is a lot of fun, and I recommend people check it out. Yeah.
All right. Well, that is all we got for this one. Thank you, Dave, once again for joining me. It was a pleasure having you back on the show to talk about this. This was awesome. Thank you. Thank you for being a part
course.
of Punch Nazi Month here on Still Loading. Who knows? Maybe this will be a yearly recurring thing. Every April, Punch Nazi Month. Who knows? Or I'll switch up the months. I don't know. But yeah, man, thank you once again for joining me. As usual, where can the good people find you online, and what would you like to promote?
Yeah. Remember 64 is the podcast out there, of course, across the podcast feeds. If you don't know what it is, or if it wasn't too obvious in the times that I mentioned it, we are going through the Nintendo 64's library, not in any particular order. Often we ask guests like Josh here to say, like, hey, what game do you want to play? Let's bring that to the table, and we'll talk about that. We'll play it. We'll talk about it, similar to what you do here. Most recently, you can hear us chatting about Rayman 2, which was fun to play. Josh also brought Toy Story 2 to the show as well. So yeah, we go through the entire library, trying to go through it game by game. And the way that I like to put it is, as I mentioned before, it's an awkward generation of games: the good, the bad, the ugly, and everything in between. I think that's what the N64 really has. So it's very cool to go back and play games that I remember, and
Mhm.
many, many, many that I don't remember and never played at all. So that's a lot of fun. And yeah, you can find it on your podcast feed. We have a Patreon page where you can get episodes early, pre-show chats, be a part of polls. There's free content as well. So it's just the way to get sort of updates on the show, and on social media, which is mostly just Instagram and Blue Sky right now. That is Remember 64 Show. And I think that's it. Yeah, that's pretty much, that's where we got. Remember 64. Everybody tell your friends.
All right. Thank you once again. And everyone go check out Dave at all those locations. Highly recommend Remember 64. I've been on it 3 times. Definitely worth checking out. I mean, if you want a starting point, check out those episodes, but check out all of those episodes. I'd also love to shout out that interview you did with Alyssa Knorr for
Elise Knorr, yeah, on
Elise Knorr,
GoldenEye.
the author
Yep.
of the GoldenEye book. That was fantastic.
As I put it, she literally wrote the book on GoldenEye.
Literally, it's
Yeah.
a fantastic episode. So besides, if you don't want to listen to any of my bullshit, you can check out that's an episode that's a personal favorite of mine. As for myself, you can follow me on Blue Sky mainly. I'm also over on Instagram a little bit. Those are the main places you can find me at Still Loading Pod. I keep having to like redo these segments because I'm so used to my normal one where I have all these different social media sites, and I don't use a lot of them anymore for various reasons. But
Yep.
I'm mainly on Blue Sky and Instagram, but I also stream on Twitch usually every Tuesday and Saturday night around. Tuesday I'm over with my buddy Andrew at the Experience Point on his Twitch channel at the EXP. That's at THEEXP point dot what? Oh my god, I'm losing the thread. At the EXP point over on Twitch. We do Talk Tuesdays over there, but normally I stream on my own channel on Saturdays around 8 p.m. Eastern Standard Time at Still Loading Pod over there, and I stream whatever nights I'm available to. I've been streaming a lot more recently because I've been able to get editing done at a better time, which has been awesome. So you'll never know, but I usually stream Tuesday and Saturday nights for sure. That's where you can find me online. And if you want to support the show, you can do so in a number of ways. You can give it a 5-star rating or review on whichever podcasting app you use. That helps more people find the show. It pleases the algorithm gods. And most importantly, it makes me feel warm and fuzzy. And I like feeling warm and fuzzy. But you can also support the show over on Patreon. There is a Patreon, patreon.com/stillloadingpod. For $1 a month, you get all the episodes a little bit earlier with better audio quality, along with patron voting rights, which help guide the direction of the show. I want to say at the time this episode's coming out, in a few weeks, there's going to be an episode on Infamous, which was voted by my patrons.
Ooh, nice.
Yes, that's all. That episode, but at the time we're recording this, even this episode will be out before it. That episode was recorded like over a month ago. Like that's how far it didn't take me long to beat it at all. Spoiler alert. I still really enjoy that game. So if you want to help guide the direction of the show with things like that, I do quarterly polls. So yeah, that you get all that for just $1 a month. For $3 a month, you get all the stuff from the first tier plus patron shoutouts, which you heard at the beginning of this episode. For $4 a month, you get everything I mentioned prior, plus 2 mini bonus episodes every month. And for $5 a month, you get everything. You get everything in the previous tiers, plus access to my monthly movie podcast, which right now is called Still Family, my monthly Fast and Furious movie podcast, where all the guests who join me aren't just friends, they're family. And if you want to check that out, I'm going to be covering all the Fast and Furious movies over there at the $5 level. Those episodes are long, like 2.5 to 3 hours long. Plus, I have all the James Bond episodes from Still Bonding, my monthly James Bond show that I did previous to that. So we just keep cycling through series. So if you want a monthly movie podcast, that is all over there at the $5 level. And that's everything I got at patreon.com/stillloadingpod. The last thing I will shout out, just a reminder for everyone, all my Patreon money from this month for Punch Nazi Month, it's going to be donated to the Trevor Project. So if you would like to get involved, do not join the Patreon for that, though I will still give that to the Trevor Project. Just donate to them directly. You don't need me to be a middleman with that and have Patreon take a cut out of it and all that shit. I'm just use this as an opportunity to donate for them as well. So yeah, that's it. That just wanted to shout that out again. Just a reminder to check out the Trevor Project. But that's all the time I got for you on this episode of Still Loading. Thank you all so much for listening. Dave, thank you once again for joining me.
Happy to be here. This was awesome.
And with all that said, listeners, I will see you all next time.